Ay, ok, chicos. Una pregunta, bueno, por ahí. Por ahí los que hacen o hacían transmisiones y demás, ¿creen que el problema sea de los micrófonos o sea de mi conexión? A ver, Carlos, tú que le entiendes más a eso.
No sé mucho, chef, pero creo que podría ser más como su conexión, porque, o sea, en rato sí lo escuchamos bien y se escucha claro, pero, por ejemplo, ahorita no me aparece el mensaje de que tenga problemas de conexión, chef, pero hay veces en las que incluso su cámara se ve como más chiquita, o sea, el video de su cámara se ve más chiquito y dice que tiene problema de conexión, y ahí es cuando creo que más batallamos para entenderle.
Ok, es que, o sea, hasta me compré un adaptador de cable Ethernet, porque mi computadora no tiene, y resulta que sería igual, o sea, es menos intermitente o es menos, ¿cómo se llama? Menos común que tenga problemas con el audio porque antes era desde el principio, ¿no? Pero ya estoy harto de este sistema. Gracias, Carlos.
Sí, chef.
Ok, bueno, pues vamos a esperar justo el nivel que voy encontrando. Y ya nada más aquí nos faltaría Esteban. Ok, le voy a dar 3 minutos para ver si se conecta. Y mientras tanto voy proyectando el video. Que es el video que les debo del día de ayer. Okay. Pero ok, ahí pueden verlo todos.
Sí, chef. Sí, chef.
Sí, chef.
Sí, chef.
Sí.
Sí, chef.
Vale. Bien. Este es el documental. Bueno, sí es un documental porque al final del día está hecho a manera del mismo, ¿sí? Pero más que eso refleja exactamente cómo se desarrolla una cocina real, donde prácticamente cada comida que se celebra es un banquete, ¿ok? El chef que vamos a ver en pantalla es el chef Graham Newell. Ahorita nos enseña más o menos qué es lo que ha hecho, lo que hace constantemente, a qué se dedica desde hace N cantidad de tiempo al servicio propio de la corona, a quienes ha servido y los banquetes ¿cómo se dice? Los banquetes imperiales que ha llevado a cabo. ¿Ok? Entonces, es un video largo, son casi 50 minutos. Pues la verdad, yo creo que vale la pena cada minuto que vamos a ver en él. Si Zoom nos da únicamente los 40 minutos normales que nos está dando, bueno, quedarán volando alrededor de, digamos de clase, bueno, de sesión aproximadamente 10 minutos, más 7, 17, quedarán volando como 17 minutos que tomaremos en cuenta en la siguiente sesión si es que nos abre una siguiente y lo discutimos terminando el mismo, ¿de acuerdo? Cualquier cosa que empiece a pasar por cuestiones de conexión o demás, me avisan, por favor. ¿Sí?
Sí, chef.
Sí, chef. Sí, chef.
Déjame llevar poco. Se escucha demasiado fuerte con el eco. Bien, y ustedes lo deben de escuchar de manera adecuada. ¿Sale? Entonces, ahí está, chicos. Graham Newell.
They're the most famous family in the world. They're used to the very best of everything, and that includes their food. Ask Graham Newbold. For 6 years, he was a royal chef.
When you're cooking for the royal family, things have to be done fairly simple, but elegantly. Things not too spicy, things not too cold, which could be harsh on the teeth. Portions not too big, portions not too small. They wouldn't like to be overfaced, and they wouldn't like to think that food had been wasted. There's no room for error. You can't really make mistakes. That's why everything's so well practiced and rehearsed. They like things done a certain way, whether it's right or whether it's wrong. That's the way they like it, and that's what you've got to do.
Windsor, the royals' favourite place for entertaining. This is the drinks reception before the Queen's Royal Jubilee Garter lunch. On occasions like this, the guests are often served a stalwart of royal cuisine, the canapé.
Canapes are something that royal chefs know a great deal about. There's one particular reception during the year where a team of some 20 chefs have to produce 15,000 of these. 15,000 canapes takes 3 days to make, and they're all consumed within 2 hours.
Nobody else in the land really has so many servants waiting on the table, or such large dinners. I mean, for instance, it's not uncommon for 140 people to sit down to dinner in St George's Hall at Windsor.
The footmen actually walk along the table with sort of cloth dusters on their feet, measuring out the distance between each place.
Every knife and fork is placed in a specific manner, and what is nice is, even at the grandest occasion, however busy she is, the Queen, maybe 20 minutes before the first guests arrive, she will go in and she will check that everything is just right.
It does look magnificent. It must be a tremendous temptation for some people to remove a gold spoon.
When the guests sit down to eat, it means things must be hotting up in the kitchen.
It takes an awful lot of planning, time, effort, hard work. Preparation starts the day before, and all 20 chefs get involved. It gets a little bit busy, but not quite as hectic as what a restaurant kitchen would get. It's all very well organised, so on the day everything runs like clockwork. And this particular main course is called duck bigarade. Bigarade means with orange and lemon sauce. It's a particular favourite of the Queen and the royal family.
The Queen's wine collection is extensive and kept in perfect condition by the yeoman of the royal wine cellar. But among the vintage labels are a few surprises.
Astonishingly, one of her favourites is Mateus Rosé, which a lot of people sneer at as a nothing wine from Portugal.
They serve very good champagne. It used to be Veuve Clicquot, which really is a major treat in itself. But now, with all the economies, it comes from Tesco's.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the toast. Her Majesty the Queen. God bless you.
Buckingham Palace is known as BP to the staff. To the royal family, it's the head office, and where all royal catering is organised.
Anything to do with food is taken care of by F branch. From the ordering to the stores, to the cooking of it, and all the administration, all belongs to F branch.
A full state visit like this for the French president involves a banquet cooked by all 20 royal chefs. 50 butlers are on hand to tend the table. The food is served on solid gold platters and eaten off the finest china. The washing up is done very gingerly by hand. But what happens when the Queen is home alone?
Well, when the Queen's on her own, she will actually eat in her dining room, on a card table, possibly in front of the television, and she'll serve herself from a sideboard. And if she's not going out to lunch, she does the same at lunchtime.
La programación es el lenguaje del futuro y a tus hijos les encantará aprenderla. Crearán apps, juegos y sitios web y su creatividad se irá a las nubes. Te sorprenderá lo que van a crear. Si tus hijos tienen entre 5 y 17 años, inscríbelos. Reserva una clase de prueba gratis.
For lunch I'm making the royal version of fish and chips, which is called haddock Saint-Germain.
King George VI used to send out for fish and chips, and he and the Queen Mother and the Queen and Princess Margaret used to sit and eat fish and chips and listen to the radio.
Look at those chips. Are those the smallest chips in the world, or what?
And they thought that was an absolute gas. I mean, that was a wonderfully sort of bohemian thing to do.
The portion size of the fish, it's really small, and it's done in breadcrumbs. And you could have salt, vinegar, or tartar sauce, something like that. But béarnaise sauce, it's equally as nice. It's made with egg yolks, butter, a vinegar and white wine reduction, and some freshly chopped tarragon. There you go, fish and chips fit for a queen.
Royal cooking and catering and the way they eat meals hasn't altered that much in the last 100 years. I know it seems incredible, but the way the royal family lived in Victorian times is not that different to now.
It wasn't just the senior royals Graham had to cook for.
First of all, you need some cabbage. Next, you need some freshly boiled lamb's liver, finely chopped. The final ingredient is some well-cooked long grain rice. Just needs a really good stir, and that's it. It's ready to serve.
For half a century, Her Majesty's yacht Britannia was the royal family's floating palace. Above decks, the Queen played host to the most powerful people in the world. The most important were invited for dinner, served in the ship's state dining room, and in a style every bit as grand as at Windsor or Balmoral.
Here I've got a few mementos of a trip I did with the Queen and the Duke to Australia on the Royal Yacht. That's a picture on board ship with the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh and all the household staff. I'm right in the middle, at the back in the shade. Every trip that you go on, you're given a group photograph, which is a souvenir for yourself to keep. When you go on the Royal Yacht, you're issued with a booklet of rules and regulations, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. This is a typical evening's entertainment. There's always a band of Royal Marines, so wherever they travel, the royal family, they could always have music. These are menus from the Royal Yacht. They're just the same as any other palace. Well, the Royal Yacht's a floating palace anyway, and it's similar sort of food which we'll get at Buckingham Palace. The only difference being there's a picture of the Royal Yacht on the actual menu card.
By the time she left service in 1997, Britannia had sailed more than 1 million miles and visited 135 countries. On a typical voyage, 5 chefs from the royal household would travel too.
It was fantastic travelling the world. If I hadn't worked for the royal family, I would never have had that opportunity. This is the cabin where I used to stay. It's cabin number 45. It's not a bad-sized cabin compared to what some of the naval personnel had to stay in. They had to stay like 3 or 4 people in a room this size. Being household staff, we had our own cabin. Not quite the height of luxury, but it's adequate, I think. He was so tired at night that he could have slept on a clothesline, tell you the truth.
Britannia is now on permanent show in Edinburgh, and the Royal Galley is still in full working order.
Today I'm going to cook rack of lamb dubarry. It's one of the main courses off a royal menu. All the royal menus are written in French. This is carré d'agneau, which means rack of lamb, and the garnish dubarry. Normally anything dubarry is with cauliflower. This time it's with cauliflower cheese, and it's with French beans, barrel-shaped roast potatoes, and it's served with a red wine and rosemary gravy. The first job is to do the rack of lamb. So first of all, just season it with a little bit of salt and pepper. This is English lamb. When the royal family are at Balmoral in Scotland, there's a special type of lamb that they have. It's soy. It's called soy sheep. It's quite nice flavoured lamb. Right, this goes into the hot pan. We want to seal the meat on the outside. We don't want the bones to burn in the oven, so just wrap a little bit of tin foil around. That'll take between 20 minutes to half an hour. It depends on the size of the rack of lamb. The Royal Galley, it's not the biggest kitchen in the world. It gets a little bit cramped and it gets very hot when you're cooking in the tropics. It can be quite difficult when you're at sea cooking. If it's really, really rough, you would be confined to your quarters and you wouldn't really be able to cook. And then the royal family, they would be airlifted off.
Even in the tropics, the royal family insist on familiar favourites to eat, like the humble roast potato.
Chateau potatoes, they're classically supposed to have 7 sides. They're just quite difficult because they're quite fiddly. There's some great times on here. You do feel a bit sad actually coming back on here because I used to like it when I was at sea.
So food on board Britannia was just like back home. But when the royals ventured ashore, it was a different story.
Well, when the Queen's on tour, and she goes to some very exotic places, as you know, she obviously will have to eat the food of the country, and she has been presented with some fairly exotic and strange dishes, as indeed they all have.
Take this occasion in Tonga, where His Royal Hungriness, the King, all 28 stones of him, laid on a huge feast.
A day of sumptuous Polynesian hospitality. Watermelons, sweet potatoes, crayfish, and 400 suckling pigs slaughtered especially for the occasion.
The Queen was offered her very own suckling pig, which she managed to decline politely. But things got slightly trickier on a trip to Central America.
I remember in 1985, she was in Belize, and she was going to be served a rat for dinner. In fact, it was something that the Belizeans called a cuniculus paca, which is a gibnut. But when you actually look at the definition of what that is, that means it's a rat. Great big long thing. She really pushed her food around the plate that night.
Back on Britannia and that rack of lamb. The red wine and rosemary sauce is now underway.
So this sauce, this has been made with onions, carrots, celery and leek. You then add tomato puree, sprinkling of flour, red wine. Half a bottle should do it. The next stage is to add some beef stock. You then add the bones from the lamb, which have been browned off, 3 sprigs of rosemary, and then I need to leave that to simmer.
The royals enjoyed lamb cooked on board Britannia and learned to be wary when apparently offered it elsewhere. Take this feast on a Middle Eastern trip.
They were served this exotic Arabian feast with all sorts of strange things, mostly meat. We couldn't quite tell.
And of course, the great tradition is that you serve the guest of honor sheep's eyes.
I didn't see Diana touch any. It was a great joke that would she or wouldn't she?
Diana just sort of got out of it beautifully, charmingly, by just giggling.
I'll now just do the extra fine beans, top and tail them, just take the bottoms off, and then they will be cut in half. It's quite important for the royal family because if there's an important dinner, it can't be seen with beans hanging out of your mouth, so it's got to be quite delicate.
A meeting with the Pope in 2000 was all smiles, But there was outrage in the Italian press when it emerged that the Queen had made it known that she wouldn't eat pasta, tomato sauce, or garlic.
Oh no, the Queen doesn't like anything like that. She's very English in her taste.
I think it's a fairly obvious reasons that if you're talking to somebody, the last thing you need is sort of swathes of garlic breathed all over you.
I quite agree with the Queen. She's got impeccable taste. Garlic and onions should be abolished.
20 years today.
The Italians didn't realise that Her Majesty had also said non grazie to the local mineral water.
She doesn't trust the local water at all, not even the bottle variety, and she takes crates and crates of Malvern water with her.
She likes her tea made with Malvern water because she can't run risks of getting ill anywhere and ruining the tour. Usually these tours are planned 2 or 3 years in advance, so, you know, for that reason she doesn't eat seafood when she's abroad because, you know, it's a bit risky.
The state visit to China in 1986 brought a worried look from Her Majesty, and it wasn't just the prospect of chopsticks. On her plate was that favourite Chinese delicacy, the slimy sea slug.
The things they do for England.
Graham is making a cheese sauce for the cauliflower du Barry. No cheddar here, just freshly grated Gruyere.
The thing that probably sticks out in my mind about cooking on board was the long days. I used to have to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning, start work for 6:30, prepare royal breakfast, then after that royal lunch, afternoon tea, and then dinner. Didn't really get a break until maybe 10 o'clock at night.
Hola, soy el Dr. Yair Seaman y quiero presentarte la nueva forma de alinear tus dientes sin brackets.
And when you're on board for maybe a month at a time, it can be really hard work.
Royal food is always labour-intensive. For example, you couldn't just serve any old cauliflower cheese. There has to be a twist.
So now what I've got to do is prepare the du Barry garnish for the lamb. And it's the cauliflower floret, and you get a nice clean white napkin, just place it inside and squeeze it, and it takes out most of the moisture, and you also end up with a nice neat like miniature cauliflower. So there's one. It's a lot of effort for a piece of cauliflower, but I think it's worth it in the end presentation-wise. At this stage, you have to get everything out on time. Timing has got to be absolutely spot on. You can't have the Queen waiting. Now we've got our cheese sauce. So what I need to do now is just nappe the top of the cauliflower. Nappe just means cover them. So they're just like individual miniature cauliflowers. This is cauliflower cheese a la Royale. Sprinkle a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top, and that has to go under the grill.
The Queen Mum in Venice, a chance too good to miss for the paparazzi.
The gondolier with the red hat band approached, the cornetto was exchanged. He got a handshake, so did his mate, and the object was whisked away by the entourage who didn't think it as funny as everyone else did.
The Italians may be good at making ice cream, but the royal chefs know a thing or two as well.
There's nothing wrong with ice cream out of a tub, but it's much better for you if you can make your own. So now I've got 10 egg yolks. Now I need 2 pints of thick cream. This cream would normally come from the Royal Dairy. It's the thickest cream I've ever seen, the Windsor cream. And to that, I will add 5 ounces of sugar. So what we have to do now is bring this to the boil. So now the cream's come to the boil. Just pour it onto the egg yolks, but you've got to whisk all the time and pour it on slowly. Once it's thoroughly mixed in, you have to Pour the mixture back into the pan and just reheat it slowly, just so it thickens a little and coats the back of the spoon. When that's cooled down, I'm going to add a plum puree that I've made. And I've made this by stewing 2 pounds of garden plums with a little bit of lemon rind, some sugar and a drop of water, just to make a nice thick sauce like that. That's the Royal ice cream machine. I've got my plum ice cream in there now. It's freezing it and at the same time it's whipping it as well. This is how the royals have their ice cream presented all the time, the royal family.
Time to finish off the main course.
The presentation is very important, so I'll just discard then a couple of pieces of lamb and just get the ones from the middle with a real nice eye of meat. When you're being entertained by the royal family, I think that people have very high expectations, so it's got to be absolutely perfect. That lamb's lovely and pink, lovely and juicy, and now it's ready to serve. These aren't terribly big portions because the royal family quite often eat 5 meals a day. It's better to eat everything that you've got on your plate and ask for a little more if you want some rather than leave some. That's the etiquette. Just drizzle a little bit of the sauce over. And there we have roast saddle of lamb du Barry à la Royale. Being on the Royal Yacht was really hard work. I've never been at sea before, so I liked it. Occasionally the royal family would go out for lunch, maybe to a government house or something, so you got a break then and got to have a look around. It was an exciting time.
Every summer, the Queen and her family head north to Scotland. Royal chef Graham Newbold used to join them.
More often than not, I would come in mid-July for between 6 to 10 weeks, and that would be to look after and cook for the royal family at Balmoral. Everything would be shipped up from Buckingham Palace. It would be packed up by the kitchen staff, all the kitchen equipment, and then it would be put in army trucks, and the army trucks would travel overnight.
Balmoral is a throwback to a culinary age long since gone.
Balmoral is full of antlers. They seem to be everywhere, sprouting at you.
Whatever the season is, whether it's salmon fishing or stalking or shooting, they will eat what they kill. There's vast vegetable gardens, and the Queen has a herd of Highland cattle. So they're very self-sufficient.
The royal family could choose anywhere in the world to holiday, but since Queen Victoria's time, they've always headed for Deeside. They've forged a unique culinary connection with the Glen and its people. Take the tiny village of Ballater. It seems every shop here has a warrant to supply the castle. The village bakery is amongst them. Bread from here is sent up to what's called the Big House. A loaf, or rather the middle of one, is needed for the first meal of the day.
This is a crouton that I'm making. It's to serve the poached eggs on for royal breakfast. Cut it out like that, and then you take a smaller cutter and cut inside like that, but you don't go right through with the little one. And when it's fried, scoop out the middle, so it looks like an empty vol au vent case, and the poached egg will just nestle on top of it.
And what goes with the Queen's poached egg? Well, this is Michael Sheridan's butcher's shop in Ballater. He's a royal warrant holder and supplier of the royal sausages.
We do a huge range of sausages. We do a beef and Guinness, we do pork and pineapple, we do pork and apple. Venison's a very popular one as well.
So what's the secret of sausages fit for a queen? The finest minced meat isn't the only thing you need.
Special blend of seasonings. A good quality breadcrumb. A little water. Make it bind together. It's now sausage meat. The sausages that go to Balmoral are exactly the same sausage as you can buy in the shop.
Oh, and another thing, the casing. It's a traditional one, not for the faint-hearted.
Some people use a synthetic skin, but we like to stick to a natural product, which is from a sheep's inner. Which gives you one huge line of sausage, which you then make into lengths of sausage. These sausages are definitely fit for any king or queen.
So, even in Scotland, a full English breakfast. But even this choice doesn't satisfy all the royals.
Prince Charles, he has a wealth